Let's bring in Rob Enderle, who's the president of Enderle Group, and surprisingly, he's joining us from Google headquarters, which is also in Mountain View, California. By the way, the Kensington Group has called Rob one of the most influential technology analysts around today. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. So let's talk about this move by Google, not exactly pulling out of China, but some are saying it's sidestepping the issue. Does this move make sense to you?
Well, not really. The fact of the matter is, if you're going to do business in a country, you have to adhere to the country's laws. That's true for people that come to do business in the United States as it is true in China. And certainly Google recently fell into problems in Italy by not understanding the laws there. So when you're a multinational, you kind of have to adhere to the laws of the land. And as much as you'd like those laws to change, realize the U.S. government has not been able to get Chinese law to change, and Google is nowhere near as powerful as the U.S. government.
Okay, so Rob, let me just ask you this. This is a sidestep for now, but do you think the end game here, we're going to see Google pull out entirely of China?
Well, we're waiting for China's response. And when you start playing brinksmanship with a government, particularly one as large and as powerful as China, you're taking kind of an unknown risk, because you're betting that the government's going to be reasonable, but governments don't have to be reasonable. They can clearly make mistakes and easily recover from them where companies cannot. So right now we're waiting for what China does in response to what Google has done, and Google's hoping that the Chinese response will not be excessive. Yet it may make a lot of sense for China to teach Google a lesson, which would be fairly painful for Google.
Rob, it's Paul Gordon here in Hong Kong as well. I'm going to show a screen here. This is google.com.hk. We can show this on the terminal here. I've done a search on that site for Tiananmen Square. Now, it's very white on our screens at the moment, but these images down here are the Tiananmen Square protests, the tanks, etc., etc. I didn't even type in Tiananmen Square protests. I just typed in Tiananmen Square. All of the 1989 massacre stuff is coming up. That tells you, doesn't it, that China's reaction is going to be block google.com.hk.
Well, at the very least, but as I say, when you do something like this to a government, sometimes you're betting that government won't go beyond that point and use you as an example for other companies that might want to exhibit similar behavior, kind of the you're either with us or you're not here at all kind of thing. And Google continues to have people that are living and working in China, on mainland China, that are executives, and those folks are now at risk for what the Chinese response would be to Google's no longer censoring material that is coming into China.
Yeah, Rob, as you mentioned, you don't mess with the Chinese government. So with Google's stance here,
don't mess with any government.
Standing up against the Chinese government, do you think there's some influence maybe to pander to the Obama administration, who's not very happy with China either?
Well, certainly. I mean, this should play well to the U.S. administration that would like some examples here. On the other hand, when I've seen companies do this in the past, there's often a lack of coordination, because clearly Google doesn't know what negotiations the Obama administration's already undergoing with regard to China. And remember, China holds an awful lot of the U.S. debt. So instead of helping things, they might actually be hurting things because they can't operate in a coordinated fashion. So this is also dangerous for the U.S., for them in the U.S., because, as they say, they could actually end up doing more damage than good, even though they may think they're doing more good than damage.
So let me ask you this. Being a champion of rights and, say, free speech, doesn't that help a company maybe get off some lists of being called an evil corporate empire and antitrust litigations? Because it sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? The Google saga with what's happened with Microsoft in the past.
Well, yeah, Microsoft also had a problem with governments. And in this particular case, at least the problem Google's having is something that would be very populist in the United States. And it could raise Google up to be some kind of a hero here. Google's under a number of investigations, both in Europe and the U.S., and this could make it much harder for a Western government, to take action against Google, because Google is acting so aggressively in what appears to be a free speech type of effort. So that might play out well for them. But as I say, when you're acting in a fashion that may not be coordinated with the government, then you're taking a pretty heavy bet that you're not actually doing damage instead of good with that government. And if you're wrong, if you guessed wrong, then it could have could have the opposite effect. So we'll see how this plays out. But Google's playing a very dangerous game here.
Okay, Rob, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights. That's Rob Enderle of the Enderle Group.